Universalism is a very common heresy today. It's a heresy that says that everybody is going to be saved. Every single person. It doesn't really matter. God is so merciful that every single person is going to end up in heaven. Most people in the United States are not universalists, but I would say most people in the United States that I've ever spoken to are at least partial universalists, which is to say they have a line. And above that line is all of the people who are so terrible there is no possible redemption. That it doesn't matter how sorry they are, God could never forgive them, and that person can never make it to heaven. And then below that line, everybody is saved. Doesn't matter if they went to church, doesn't matter if they prayed, doesn't matter if they ever had a relationship with Jesus. Every single person below that line is saved. Basically, this heresy divides the world into the irredeemably evil and the, of course, just fine, wonderful good. Problem being, why do we get to set that line? All right? Why do we get to say this person is irredeemable and this person is not? If anybody ever gets to set that line, it's God. Now, we know that universalism is a heresy because of our gospel. Jesus says that there are going to be people who stand outside the gate and they knock, saying, "Lord, open the door for us." And the Lord is going to say in reply, "I do not know where you are from." I can think of no more terrifying gospel in the entire cycle of Sunday readings than this gospel. This should set our hair on end and should fill us with terror, that it is possible for the Lord to look at us and say, "I do not know you. I do not know where you are from. Depart from me." It's in the gospel. It's a real thing that can really and truly happen to people. What do we do with that? Well, one of the reasons why universalism is so incredibly dangerous is because it has undercut the urgency of the gospel. If everybody is saved, or, more commonly in the U.S., if everybody is saved except serial killers, then we don't have to preach the gospel. There's no reason to tell people about Jesus. They're going to be fine. It doesn't really matter if they pray or if they know the Lord or if they have a relationship with the Lord or if they go to Mass. It doesn't really matter. I don't have to do anything because everybody else is going to be fine unless they're terrible. And if they're terrible, then I can just write them off because there's no redemption for them anyway. Of course we haven't been evangelizing. Of course we haven't been preaching the gospel. Because universalism says it doesn't matter. But it does. As Christians, we know that it does matter. Salvation comes only through Jesus Christ. And we need to help everybody that we possibly can to have a deep and abiding relationship with Jesus Christ through which they are saved. If we write it off and say it's fine, then we're not going to do our job as Christians. And this gospel is going to happen to people that we could have reached out to. Now, some context. This gospel is in the context of a theological dispute going on at the time of Jesus. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. He's very close to Jerusalem, I think, in this part of the Gospel of Luke, or he's getting there. And so he's getting closer and closer to the scribes and the Pharisees, and more of his dialogues happen with them. So this person who asks, "Lord, is it true that only a few people will be saved?" goes back to the question of, okay, is it only the Pharisees who are going to be saved? The Pharisees were deeply observant of the law, of the law of the Torah, of the law of Moses, deeply observant. And they would say, unless you're as observant as we are, you cannot be saved. So the Pharisees consider themselves as the only ones who are going to be saved. Then there's the idea that only the Jews will be saved. That you don't have to quite be a Pharisee, but as long as you are an ethnic Jew, a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then you will be saved. And then, and this wasn't a very common position at the time of Jesus, this is one of the innovations of Christianity, then there's the question of, could Gentiles be saved? Is there any way in which a Gentile could be saved? And so this person is asking about that theological question. Is it true that only a few will be saved? Generally asking about the stance of the Pharisees. Is it true that only the Pharisees will be saved? Jesus answers him with two things. He says, strive to enter through the narrow gate. The first thing he tells this guy is, don't worry about the theology. You focus on being holy. You focus on striving to enter through the narrow gate. And I'd say that for all of us as well. We can't put a percentage on 5% of people go to heaven or 5% of people go to hell. We can't do that. It's not helpful. But we can say, I am going to focus on my holiness. I am going to strive to enter through the narrow gate. And how do we do that? Well, we make sure that when we are face to face with the Lord, that He knows us. How do you know somebody? Think about your spouse. If you live a marriage such that everybody is always running around all the time, and somebody's always taking the kids to soccer practice, and somebody else is always working, and you're like chips passing in the night, after a couple years you will look at each other and say, I don't think I know you anymore. It's a leading common cause of divorce. I don't think I know you anymore. Let's not do the same with the Lord. We need to spend time with the Lord every day and every week so that we know the sound of His voice in prayer. We know His teachings through the Scriptures. We know His presence in our neighbors and in those who are marginalized. We need to spend time with the Lord such that when I'm in heaven, if I'm surrounded by thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, I can pick out which one is Jesus because I know Him, because I've spent time with Him. And He can look at me and He wouldn't say, I do not know you, depart from me, but He would say, I'm so glad that we can finally be present to each other in this deeper way, as we have been present to each other for your entire life. Strive to enter through the narrow gate. And I'll tell you, it's hard. That gate is narrow. It is hard. Living out Christianity is difficult. I went through many years where my prayer was very dry. I just felt like I couldn't have a conversation with the Lord. I wasn't getting anything out of prayer. Many of us struggle when the church has a difficult teaching. We struggle to say, okay, I'm going to choose my religion over my political party or over my friends and family. But the letter of the Hebrews says, my son, do not disdain the discipline of the Lord or lose heart when reproved by Him. For whom the Lord loves, He disciplines. He scourges every son He acknowledges. The discipline and difficulty of Christianity is not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something right. Because you are living into your sonship or your daughtership in the Lord. He is claiming you as one of His children. And in that claim, He is helping you to be the best person you can be. But nothing worth doing is easy. Talk to any athlete. The amount of work that they have to put into their craft is difficult, and it is hard, and it requires discipline. The same is absolutely true of Christianity. Strive to enter through the narrow gate. Push through the discipline and the difficulty so that you can know the love of the Lord on the other side. Now again, Jesus' parable is addressed to the Jews of His time. And that's why He uses this phrase, there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, and you yourselves cast out. He's addressing the claim that many people made at the time, which is, I'm saved because I'm a Jew. I've received this inheritance, and I'm going to be fine. And he's saying, that's not true. You have to strive. And he's especially addressing those who rejected Him as Messiah. And he says, look, right? He is the gate. He is the narrow gate. And if they reject Him, He's going to say, well, I don't know you either. The analogy today, I would say, is especially fallen away Catholics. Those who say, well, I don't really need to pray. I don't really need to go to church. I don't really need to do anything with my faith. I'll be fine, right? I'll be fine. I kind of pray. I kind of believe in Jesus. Everything's fine. It's not the teaching in our gospel. It's not what the Scriptures actually say. And so, I would say, we should be, and I know most of you, because you're here on Sunday, are, but we should be absolutely desperate to bring these people back to church. It should be the animating force in our life. It should be the thing that gets us up in the morning and the thing we think about when we're going to bed. It should be the fire in our belly. It should be the thing that we care about more than anything else in the entire world, is making sure that those who know Jesus, who grew up knowing Jesus, continue to have a relationship with the Lord, so that when they are face to face with Him at the end of their life, He will say, I know you, because we've spent time together. I'm currently going through a really, really fascinating Pew survey that was put out this summer on American Catholics. And the super depressing number, there are two. 43% of Catholics, of U.S. adults who are raised Catholic, will now no longer claim Catholicism as their religion. 43%. So almost 50% completely reject the Church. Now, there are people who will continue to claim to be Catholic. 20% of U.S. adults will claim to be Catholic, but practices within that vary. Only about 13% of U.S. Catholics go to Mass every Sunday and go to confession and pray every day. 13% of those who claim to be Catholic. 28% go to Mass every Sunday. Another significant percentage don't go to Mass at all. They'll claim to be Catholic, but they don't go to Mass at all. When you add all of that together, the final number is 66% of people who are raised in the Church, 66% of U.S. adults who are raised Catholic, no longer go to Mass. 2 out of every 3. And if you look around our church, generally our demographics skew older, so you can imagine that number is probably better for older generations and worse for younger generations. We might be looking at 50% of older generations raised Catholic have left the Church, but maybe 75 or 80% of the younger generations who are raised Catholic have left the Church. Again, the thing that should get us out of bed in the morning, the thing we should think about when we go to bed at night, the thing that fuels us during the day. How can I bring these people back to the Lord? How can I make sure that they spend time with Jesus in daily prayer and in weekly Eucharist? It's a hard problem. It is the problem I've been trying to solve since college. It's the problem I've been trying to solve my entire time as a priest. And it's the problem we're trying to solve with Partners in the Gospel and with all of our work in parish life. I can tell you this. The thing that I know works, although it's very general and we haven't figured out how to make it specific, is you pray about who you have a relationship with. And then you pray, what does that relationship allow me to do? So there are people with whom we have a reasonable relationship, friends, family, or acquaintances, where we could say, hey, would you like to come to Mass with me on Sunday? It wouldn't be rejected. It wouldn't be a whole fight like it sometimes is with certain people, but would you like to come to Mass with me on Sunday? Try it. Bring them to Jesus. Help them to know the Lord. Sometimes that's going to be a no, but they might come to your house for a gathering where you have strategically also invited a bunch of other parishioners. So it's a bunch of Catholics and this one person. That's fine, right? They'll say yes to that barbecue. People like barbecues. Sometimes it's something in the middle. Would you like to come over to my house for a Bible study or to pray the rosary? A lot of fallen away Catholics might not want to be at Mass, but they kind of want a little Catholicism. Sometimes the rosary is a really nice in. Pray about, who do I have in my life? Who do I have a relationship with? And what does that relationship allow me to do? Now, I'll name for you that oftentimes the people closest to us, deepest in our hearts, are our family. And our family are the hardest people to talk to Jesus about, because they have seen us at our best and at our worst. And it's hard because they'll be like, well, you can't actually believe in Jesus because of this one time that you hurt me. Or they might say, well, I'm not going to listen to you because I knew you when you were in diapers, so whatever you say doesn't really matter. Okay. Fine. Strive to enter through the narrow gate. Be as holy as you can, and then evangelize who you can. If your relationship with your family is such that you cannot invite them back to church or back to prayer, invite other people. If you evangelize every single person in this county except the people you're related to, eventually they will get on board, if they're the last holdouts who aren't going to Mass. Okay, work on everybody else. Who do you have a relationship with? Who's going to say yes? We're not doing this because it feels good to have numbers. We're not doing this because we need a full church. We're almost out of seats in this one. We're doing this because it's terrifying that anybody would ever hear the Lord say, I don't know you. Who are you? We've never spent any time together. It's the last thing we would ever want for anybody. Those that we love, those that we barely even know, anybody. Our job as believers in Jesus is to bring everybody we possibly can to the font of salvation, to the Lord who saves, to the one who forgives. It is our job to bring people to faith. And we should take that job deeply, deeply seriously.